All right, everybody, welcome back to Strange Stories with the Seeker and the Skeptic. I am Jonathan. I am the skeptic.
And I'm Brittany. I am the seeker.
Today, we are going to have a conversation with our friends Curt and Rachel Huff. Curt and Rachel live in the mountains of Southwest Virginia, which is interesting and sometimes a scary place, especially if you're driving those curvy roads at 65 miles an hour at 2 o'clock in the morning
I
with no headlights.
think there's a story there.
Well, the older you get, you realize that motion sickness is still a thing no matter how old you get, and being car sick is not fun at 30.
And we have lots of
First.
suicidal deer.
Oh, yeah, that's not good.
So both of you have got some pretty interesting things to talk about with us today. But I think that where I would like to begin with this is with Rachel, and you had mentioned through the questionnaire that we asked people to return to us that you actually have generational kind of high strangeness in your family, and we were really interested to hear what that means in your context.
The easiest way to explain it is my whole family is a bunch of weirdos. And what makes it even more fun is the fact that I am adopted at 12. And that side of the family has the same, I wouldn't say abilities, but they're way more sensitive than things than most other people are. So I've experienced a lot of things with my biological family and some with my adopted family. And the way I look at it is some people are special and more in tune with things than others. And on both sides of the family, we have several members of us that are very in tune with things.
Like, what kind of things are you guys in tune with?
Um, well, one of the stories that I'll talk about in a little bit is I always had this thing where I was always an emotional kid, like years of childhood trauma. But being an emotional kid, like I would get upset over something that is currently going on. And while I'm upset and crying and freaking out, I'm then saying things that I'm not really paying attention to. And then after the fact, the things that I had said while upset begin to happen in the sequence of events that I had said them in. So it was more like this I would get upset and say something that I felt compelled to say. And then later on, that thing will have happened, or it happened at the same time that I said whatever it was that I said. Um, yeah, those are like the trippy things that I went through as a kid. I think it started with my mom's mom. We all called her Granny. And I just remember being in elementary school and I got the phone call to the classroom saying, "Hey, can Rachel come up to the office? Someone's here to pick her up." So I'm like walking down the breezeway and my mom's there and she's upset and I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, "Well, Granny's in the hospital and she's not doing very well." And I was like, "Okay." And I remember like I was upset, but not too upset, but I just looked at her and I was like, "Mom, she's already gone." So we get in the car and then we're heading to Asheville where the hospital was. And I'm, just sitting there watching the clock because, it's an awkward silence in the car. Nobody's wanting to talk. And then we get there, and my uncle, he was like propped up against the hospital and he was just bawling. So, of course, we walk up to him. And at this time, it took us 25 minutes to get there. So, my uncle looks at his watch and he looks at my mom and he goes, "Mom died 25 minutes ago." And that would be around the time that I had said that. And of course, I'm like this 8, 9 year old kid. I don't have a concept of what's going on. I was just like, "Hey, mom, she's gone." And then we get there and I find out that that is around the same time that it did happen,
Wow.
which I always thought was a really weird coincidence, especially when being so upset and saying something that I'm not quite paying attention to.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It's like in this moment of high emotion, some clarity is coming through. And, where's that coming from? Obviously, we don't know, but that you're picking up on something and not even conscious of it.
And that's the funny thing is like I had the same situation happened when I was like 12 with my dad's mother, my mamaw. She had cancer. She was, staying with us, and we were, going through the treatment plans and doing everything we could. But my father didn't want me to go see her because he didn't want that to be my last memory of her. Well, I remember one day my parents had, split long ago, and I'm getting ready for school in the bathroom. And I'm just like upset crying because me and her were really close. And I was like, I really want to go see Mama. And she's like, your dad won't let you go see her. And I was like, I understand this, but like, I want to go see Mama. And I'm bawling and I'm pissed. And I'm like, look, I want to go see Mama before she goes into a coma and she dies. And my mom just looked at me and she's like, what did you say? I said, I want to see her before she goes into a coma and she dies. And then that's, like getting ready for school is about 6 or so in the morning. I think it was like 8:30 that morning. She went into a coma. The next morning, we got a phone call about 2, 3 a.m. in the morning saying that she had passed. So she did, in fact, go into a coma and die. And I didn't get to see her. And I was very upset because, I really wanted to go. And then it literally happened within a 24-hour period of when I said it.
Wow. Has anything like that happened since you've been an adult?
No. The only reason I could think that it hasn't is because this is going to sound really bad. I've become very desensitized by death in my family. Most of my family is dead. Um, I'm from Asheville, so most of the people I grew up with have actually died of, fentanyl and overdosing, and I have lost a lot of friends that way. I was friends with the punks, the crusty kids, the alternative kids. So of course, we all kind of scattered and done our own thing, and not all of us made the best life decisions. So I've lost a lot of friends. I think the last time I really got upset over a death was my friend Claire, who died about a year or so ago. But other than that, I've become kind of so desensitized that like I haven't had that raw emotion about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never had another moment where I'm like, oh my God, this, and this is happening. So those are like my two biggest ones of just being so upset and saying something that I can't take back, but then it actually happens in the order of events that I've said.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you were in kind of a highly emotional state for both of those time frames. I wonder if that, maybe had something to do with, you know, with what you did, think and then say.
Oh, I 100% believe because like I am an emotional person, but in those instances, it was more of a raw emotion that you don't just have on a day-to-day basis. It was under extreme circumstance.
Right.
And I will mention, I was going to mention this before you mentioned coming from the Asheville area. I think that North Carolina is maybe the most strange affected place in the country. Not just because I'm from there and have stories of my own, but almost everyone I know who is from the state of North Carolina either has got stories from childhood or teen years that just don't make sense to other people, or has that story of their grandmother who was in two places at one time, or something. That it just, you don't see that as much in other places, except for maybe apparently Kentucky. But that's just, I think maybe the most haunted state in the country might actually be North Carolina.
I do think a lot comes from the Appalachian Mountains. The Appalachian Mountains, like there's so many stories of like seeing weird things. And I mean, you can go to Asheville and everybody talks about Helen's Bridge and the Pink Lady at Grove Park Inn. And those are just like the nice, frilly ones. Those aren't even like the weird things. I mean, I could honestly say where my mom grew up is still, if I'm not mistaken, one of the only Sundown County towns still around. Um, and it is literally so deep seated in racism, and there's like nothing out there. But I remember my mom just like vaguely telling me stories of like my grandpa who took a ride with the devil, and then there was like, um, you know, on the family property, weird men in robes. and then um, the Indian healers and stuff like that, all the things that we don't have, common today.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of it is deep rooted in the mountains and just
Yep.
how they grew up back then. It's completely different than it is now.
I mean, here too, there's things like I grew up and saw water witchers with the water diviners that look for places to dig wells. And my dad said when they built the house, uh, they hired a water witcher, and I've seen one before, but the guy that they hired found their a spot, said dig a well here, and the water was like 80 feet down. Whereas here next door, they didn't use a water witcher, and the well here is like 450 feet down.
Oh, wow.
So, but I mean, and then just things like, don't go out in the dark into the woods by yourself, those kind of things. And not the whole, you might get lost kind of thing, but just not explaining why, just ominous, like, there's things, don't go out there at night.
I don't know. I had a lot of Hispanic babysitters, and it was always the El Chupacabra is going to get you, so you better listen to your parents.
And then
That one's more fun.
you have the
Yeah.
really crazy uh, churches that you have here too. I mean, the most dramatic are like the snake handling churches. But I mean, even I grew up going to a Pentecostal holiness church, which is really full of, like Welsh, Celtic, pagan imagery. And, that stuff is integrated into the culture here. I mean, the majority of the Appalachian Mountains are populated by Irish and Scottish people. And they immigrated over here 300 years ago, moved up in the mountains, and up until the 30s, 40s even, for the most part, the mountains here were really cut off from the rest of the world. I
For
mean,
sure.
it wasn't until Roosevelt and the push to get electricity installed everywhere that you started to see the mountain communities become more integrated. There's still a lot of mistrust here for people who aren't from here.
Mhm.
I mean, I know that's common too in mountain communities up and down the range.
Oh, for sure. That's like kind of like the trope for, for Maine specifically. Like, you hear, people who are from Maine who have, neighbors that moved there 70 years ago said that they were almost one of us. And a lot of people also don't realize that Maine is part of the Appalachian Mountains. It does
Mm-hmm.
reach that far up north.
I mean, we're definitely hearing a lot of crazy stories about, the Appalachian Mountains. We kind of started all of this going down a rabbit hole with a show called Hellier. I don't know if Jonathan's talked to you guys about it, but it takes place in Kentucky and West Virginia, and all of it is surrounding like weird things happening in this mountain range. So, I mean, I think there is something odd going on there for sure.
I also feel like a lot of the places there in the Appalachian Mountains, like it begins with it's just people in nature. Like there's
Mm,
no technology, there's no nothing, it's them and the earth.
hmm.
And then that's when things kind of get a little weird. And you're like, what is going on with these people in the middle of nowhere with nothing?
Right.
That's what makes it so interesting, is because you don't exactly know where it's going to go or what it is that they're experiencing there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just, kind of looping back to what you were talking about with those experiences, when you basically had these insights that you could not have had really by normal explanation. Uh, the experiences from other family members, do you feel like they have had similar types of experiences, or like it's a kind of a different context, or from what you've heard?
Different contexts, mostly from mostly on my biological family. It's more of the like Native American natural healing, stories of natural healers, medicine men. And then, of course, when I'm born early, 92, that wasn't a thing that I had around. My mom was born in 64, the only girl out of seven boys on a farm in the middle of nowhere. Like, that was where that was. And me growing up, I didn't have that. But when I was adopted at 12, my stepmother, she is very in tune with things, more on the medium aspect of telling me things that she couldn't know about somebody. Like there's no possible way she would have known some of the things that she was telling me. So it was obvious what she was telling me was communication from somebody else.
Mhm.
Um, there, there was talking to my mom, and you know, things are being told to me that there's no way she would have known. Like she wouldn't have known about my little tree frog that I named Frankie, who went missing, of me never finding him and asking her what the hell happened to my frog, dude. Like, it's my frog. And then she's like, yeah, Frankie was found underneath the refrigerator, very much unalive. And I'm like, okay, but she was also like telling me what my frog's name was. It's just like, what happened to my frog? And she's like, oh, your tree frog named Frankie. And I'm like, yeah, that one. Where is he? Like, what happened to my frog? And just,
Wild.
and that one's just like an easy one. That's not even the like emotional conversations that were had. That
Yeah.
one was just the weirdest of like, are you sure? Because of course you're gonna be skeptical when somebody's like, I'm talking to so and so, and I'm like, all right, let's go. So tell me what my first pet was. Tell me what this was. Tell me things that there's no possible way you could have known by like my dad telling you or anybody else. So like nobody knew about my frog. So of course that was the first thing I went with.
And so just to clarify, she actually has said to you like this is like a personality that I am speaking to as someone who's not here anymore.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. You're cutting out a
In the
little bit.
room. Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
No, it was more of a, oh, she's in the room and I'm going to tell you exactly what she's saying to me. And I would ask her questions and she would respond by what, my mom was saying. And it was, like I said, of course you're going to be skeptical. And I'm like, but are you sure though? And I did. I was kind of an ass about it, honestly. And I just kept on asking questions, stupid questions. I'm like, all right, like I'm gonna make sure that you're not lying to me. I mean, like one, that would be a really crappy thing to lie about.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
also like I've never been able to communicate with things. Like I could feel things, never been able to communicate. So I'm like, all right, so since this is really happening, tell me more.
Mhm.
And that was like I think I've only had like one conversation when it, was with her. And that was it. Um,
And was that a long time
but
ago? Was that close to when she had passed, or is
it
it more
was
recently?
oh yeah, it was after she passed. I was 16. My mom passed when I was 12.
Okay.
So I was like 16 when these events happened.
Mhm.
So, and that was also when I was reaching out with religion and trying different religions that worked for me because I gave up on Christianity a long time ago. That wasn't working for me, nor was the people that were a part of it working for me. I was praised for being the little girl who prayed at the altar every day that she went to church. And I literally went to church religiously. My mom had epilepsy. So I went to church every day crying on the altar, like, please heal my mom. Please make it so she don't have seizures. The preacher's like, look at this little girl. She's here all the time, blah, blah, blah. Making an example of me while I'm like, literally, like, please, can you fix my mom? God, fix my mom, please. Like, and then like, I came home one night from church and she had a seizure. And that was one of those moments where I'm like, well, why am I doing this constantly? Like that was my first moment where I'm like, I am literally up here crying, 2, 3 times a week, you know, trying to do what I'm told is what I'm supposed to do in order for this to be fixed. They make it where this is your answer. You have to do this. So I'm going here and I'm doing this and I'm like, fix my mom, like, please fix my mom. Why, all these crazy things happen, miracles happen for people all the time. Like, why can I have a miracle? Like, let this happen for me. And I think after that was, I did have my moment where I was already questioning it at a young age, where I'm just like, well, this doesn't seem very fair. Like, I'm a little pissed off.
Hmm.
Like, all these other people get their miracles. Like, what did I do so wrong that I can't experience the same? Um, so that was when I first started questioning it. And then it just continuously got worse. Before my mom died, she went through this thing where she's like, I think we need to go back to church. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm a kid. I'm gonna go where you go. So we went back to church for probably about a month or 2 months before she died. She just felt the need to go to church. So she went to church. And then after she passed, I didn't go to church. I went to somebody else's church when I was like 14, one or two times. And then it became a, oh my God, look what they're wearing, look what they're wearing. And just always been the weird kid and alternative. Like, I don't dress like everybody else. And if I'm going to go do anything religious, I don't feel like what I'm wearing makes any difference. Like, if we're all coming here for the same cause, what does it matter what I'm wearing? But people are just kind of judgy for places that aren't supposed to be judgy. I don't think this is going to work for me.
Yeah, I hear
And
you. Organized religion tends to be a social club.
yeah, and I've never been the cool kid, and I'm okay with that. Like, I have no interest. And I've realized, like, being here in Southwest Virginia, the churches are not churches here, they're straight up cults, and it is terrifying, and no thank you.
Especially the part of Southwest Virginia you folks are in. There's
Oh,
some
yeah.
interesting communities out that way for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't, never been a big one on suppressing women. So I'm like, like, are you good? Are you good? Are you sure you good? You sure you don't need me to come help you? Like, you sure your husband's okay? Like,
Yeah.
he's looking a little old, you're looking a little young. You
Blink
good?
Hmm.
You
twice
need
if
help?
you're
I'll
here
help
against
you.
your will.
Right. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude, it's like, okay, I'll help you if you need help.
So it seems like religion's not for you. What are your beliefs around like spirituality in general?
Um, I feel like you get back what you put in. Whatever energy you're putting out, you're going to
Hmm.
receive that. Um, if there is a higher being, I'll say it again, I think it's a woman, because only a woman can be so complex when it comes to creating such beautiful things and being pretty damn vindictive sometimes. I'd hope she has like a good sense of humor, because I will say during my life so far, somebody is having a laugh and it's not me. But I just feel like whatever energy you put out is what you get in. And if there is a higher being, I still believe that that's not necessarily God. It's an omnipotent being. It doesn't take on any form, it is just there, it exists. And I feel like if you're a good person, you're a good person. If you're a bad person, you're a bad person. Like, I don't physically believe in a heaven and hell, but I also believe that if you're a crappy person, you can experience hell on earth.
Hmm.
Like,
I mean, it sounds like karma. Like, yeah, what you put
yeah,
out, you get back to you. Yeah.
because I mean, like, somebody's probably having a great laugh at me, and that's fine. I'll take it. But following and believing a book is just very hard for me. And I have extremely religious family, and I love them, and they can believe whatever they want to. And they're usually pretty, chill with me and what I believe. I just don't push mine on them. They don't push theirs on me. And it's just, I don't think that we need to have a book and guidelines to be a good person.
Hmm.
And I feel like if you have to have a book telling you what you can and what you can't do on how to be a good person, then you're a crap person. Like, just let it be.
Yeah, at
Like,
that point you're
If
already
you
a
have
bad
to,
person.
yeah, like, give up.
if you have to be a good person, your reasoning for being a good person is so you don't get punished
Right.
in the afterlife. and you couldn't just be a good person without any, you know,
Incentive.
incentive. There you go. And definitely not a good person.
Hmm.
I mean, if there was a god, can it be coffee gods? Because like if we could hook up a coffee IV stat, that would be fantastic. You know, that is a religion I can get behind ASAP.
I mean, there's the, what is it, Pastafarians. So, I mean, why not coffee? I think you have just created
We
something
gotta
that
find
could be a
a,
movement.
yeah, we gotta find a really cool name for it, but I am
Yeah.
all for worshiping the coffee bean.
Yeah. So, Rachel, do you believe in an afterlife? Because I mean, it seems like you said it was your stepmother, right? Communicating with your mother. So it's like, what are your thoughts about that? How did that happen?
Afterlife is tricky for me. Like I don't
Hmm.
believe in heaven and hell. And if I was going to follow any type of religion, like putting it like to a T, I guess I would go with like the way Buddhists believe. I mean, we're just recycled until we get right, and then you go to nirvana, and it's just I feel like that would be just peace. You're
Hmm.
just done.
Hmm.
Um, but I do believe that there is a veil from our world to the next that is, you know, definitely thinner during sometimes. I just feel like there's either you don't quite make it to nirvana or just, you know, don't exist. And then there's just this little place where you do exist for you to decide what you're going to do. If you're going to go get recycled again, or if you're just going to go ahead and be nothing. I mean, that's the easiest way for me to explain it. It is kind of complicated and
Hmm.
weird. I'm not expecting anybody to, you know, believe it. But I mean, there is something else out there. I just don't know what.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, I hope it is a brief period of in between and not a forever stuck in between. Because
Hmm.
eventually I'm going to want the lights to go out. My brain does enough now. Like, I'm going to need to shut down at some point.
Gonna need some quiet.
Yeah, I'm going to need that peace at some point, please.
Hmm. I feel you.
One of the things that you mentioned to us through that questionnaire was that there was a time when you feel like there was a feeling or like a set of you know you use the word vibes. I don't know a better word to this that actually you credit as having saved your life. What is that story?
Okay, so it's been a couple times about the, like having feelings about a person that you can't really explain. Just like I guess it's the energy that they put off being foul. I remember the first house I ever lived in, I think I lived there until I was like 6 or 7. So I remember being around 5 because I had a Barbie tin in my room and one of those like cool Crayola desks that I melted all my crayons in. And I remember this for a reason. I'm not just a weirdo reminiscing about the early 90s. Um, but we lived across from a automotive shop, and then there was like this one little pathway that, you know, I learned to ride my bike on, and then there was a gentleman who lived in a trailer right across the street from us, and they were all friends, the mechanic and the guy who lived in the trailer. Mechanic dude was hella weird. I remember growing up, he was always like, can't wait until you get older, I'm gonna marry you. Like, bro had to be in his 40s when I was like 5, 6 years old. Like, something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
um but I remember me and my mom were home, and the guy from the trailer, his name was Dusty, if I'm not mistaken. It was a weird name um, for a weird dude. But he was walking across the street. My dad was at work, so it was just me and my mom home. You could obviously tell because my mom's car was in the driveway. Um, and like this time, this is one of my first memories. It can't be 5, 6 years old that I could remember. And he's walking across the street, and mom's like, shit. And I was like, what? And she's like, he's coming across the road. And I just looked at her because like we had these open windows in the front of the house. So me and her both take off and we go hide because that dude is weird. He makes us feel weird, like something is wrong with him. We can't pinpoint what it is. And also, it's really strange for a man to come over to a woman's house with their kid, knowing that their husband's not around or anything. And I mean, we weren't really close to him. We didn't talk to him. There's absolutely nothing he needed at our house. So I remember we went to go hide in my room and shut the door, and I was like hiding in my Barbie tent, which is why that was important to me. Like we were hiding from him, and I was never given an explanation on why we didn't like him. We just knew that something wasn't quite right. We didn't want to be around him, so we hid. And I mean, it was several occasions that he would try to come over and we just go hide in my room again. It wasn't till I think I was 19 years old. I'm nosy. I got nothing better to do some days. So I like to create mugshots. And then I've always been the one who searches up sexual predators in my area. I found him. I found the creepy neighbor that we both could not stand and always hid from. If I'm not mistaken, he had raped like a 4-year-old.
Oh my.
So that was when I was like, oh, okay, so maybe my, vibes or radar on how people aren't quite bad. Like it's working the way it should. It's keeping me away
Mm-hmm.
from these people. And then I guess it would be about 2003. I was 11. We had moved across the street from where we used to live into this brick house. And this is the last house that I lived in with my mom. Well, this is when my mama had started getting sick and going through cancer treatments. But we all go and look at this house because, my mama was going to be staying with us. So we needed a bigger place to stay. So we go over there and look, and we meet the landlord. And I just remember him being wearing old school overalls. Like, I can't remember if it was like the Pointer brand, but they were just like old, dingy overalls that an old guy wears. Um, I can't remember his name, and it drives me absolutely insane that I can't. In my mind, I think I've just named him Marshall. I don't know if that's his actual name, but that's what's kind of stuck with him. Um, he was weird. I never liked him. Super strange. He just made me feel creepy. And we were viewing the house. It was a 2 bedroom, 1 bath house, but it had a full basement. Basement was unfinished basement, but that's where the laundry room was. And then he was like, "Yeah, I do have some stuff down here. You're more than welcome to like look at it or whatever." So I was like, "Okay, a little weird, but he had a typewriter and I was interested in that." But after my memo had passed away in 2004, January 14th, um, we you know, my dad left again for the, 10,000th time. He just, got back together with my mom to help take care of his mom. So after she passed, he left again. So it was just me and my mom. And sometimes she was a nurse, and sometimes she would get home before I would. Sometimes I would get home before her. And I remember one instance, I didn't have my house key, so I couldn't get in the house, but the landlord was riding a lawnmower around the house. And I'm like, God, I really don't want to be around this guy today. And so he would mow the back of the house and I would be on the front of the house. He would go to the right side of the house. I would hide on the left side of the house. Like we were literally in rotation, moving away from each other because I did not want to have any contact with that man. Once again, weird kid. I was the goth kid and like what, sixth, seventh grade then. So he made it abundantly clear that he did not like the clothing that I was wearing. I think I remember I was wearing a white t-shirt, straight up got it from Rugged Warehouse, and it said trouble and black letters across the front of it. Like it's nothing. It's a t-shirt, dude. Like he went on this whole tangent about, oh my God, you're such a good girl. Why are you wearing things like that? You're giving guys the wrong message and blah 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 blah. So yeah, once again, Creeper McCreeperton had an opinion. Um, Then he said, "Hey, I have this computer. You're more than welcome to use it, blah, blah, blah." So, and that was dial up days, baby, AOL, and all the crazy robot noise trying to connect. So I didn't really do anything on the internet, but my background was of Happy Bunny, the original meme. So it was like cute but psycho, things even out. Because I remember it because I had the t-shirt. That was my background. And then one day he comes up to me and he was like, so why is this your background on the computer? Like, first of all, why would you know this? Like, how do you know this? That's really fucking creepy. Like, so I was telling mom, I'm like, Mom, why is he in the house? Like, he's not supposed to be in the house. It's not how landlords work. Like, they can't just come in whenever they want to, because if they could, then why are we paying rent? And I was like, he's creepy. And she's like, oh, he's, a nice older man. I don't think. And I was like, nah, he's a little weird. And then it like continued to escalate. And he was just the strangest man. And no matter what I wore, he always had an opinion on it. I really didn't have much to do with him unless I had my mom, with me because I'd hide from the man. But I did notice things were moving and not in the places I thought. And I was like, dude, this guy has to be getting in our house when we're not there, like moving things. Like there's no other possible reason why these things keep going missing. Well, my mom passed away. She died in the house. Um, I remember I was trying to get off the bus. They wouldn't let me off the bus at school, so I ended up getting like cornered by a policeman, a preacher, and my dad to take me into the school to have this like big meeting to tell me that my mom died. So, of course, that ended in travesty. I finally get into the house, get the few things I need. And then, we have this big discussion with my dad and soon to be stepmom like, hey, we need to get these things out of the house. How are we going to get these things out of the house? Where are we putting all the things we're taking out of the house? Because that was a big deal because it was, everything that I've ever had in my life, like everything. So we started sorting through things. They were sorting through most of it because I mentally couldn't. But I remember we had on the kitchen table, I don't know, hundreds of like my baby photos, like all my photos. They were, organizing them on the table. And I mean, like we had like 5 or 6 stacks of like half a foot to a foot of like photos stacked on the kitchen table. And then we come in and, we're packing up our stuff. And then there's literally a note that said, I took a couple of these to remember you by. I hope you don't mind.
Oh my.
Like, what the fuck?
That's
Yeah.
super
Like,
creepy.
what do you fucking mean? Like, these are my baby photos. One, I'm 12. Two, you took my baby photos? Like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, that was when I was like, something is fucking wrong, beyond wrong. And then after that, um, he showed up to my mom's wedding, or not wedding, shit, funeral. But when he showed up to my mom's funeral, like he was so nice and he like gave me a card and he was like, me and my wife send our condolences. Okay, like I've never met his wife, never seen his wife, don't think this wife even existed. And besides, taking my photos, like dude was already on my shit list. Didn't want to see him at my mom's funeral. Like out of all things, like this is not what I want to deal with right now. He I just remember he came up to me, he hugs me. I don't even think he signed my mom's book because I was looking for his signature to find him now. Um, but before we, had all our stuff moved, he had given me a card. And you can tell us back in the day since it had a Kmart gift card in it. And then it was just like, hey, I would love for you to come with me and my wife to Pennsylvania for 2 weeks to go to church with us. Well, one, where's your wife? Never met your wife. What do you mean? Like my mom has literally been dead at this point, maybe a week and a half.
And you're 12.
Yeah. Um, and he gave me a fucking book. This man typed me a book. And like the old books you could get in school that are like laminated with like the black rings
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
just makeshift books. Yeah. He had a whole book that he wrote to me over 100 pages. Um, I didn't get very far in it. I can't remember it. I remember there was like parts talking about I'm giving men the wrong idea with the way that I dress, that I am dressing way too provocative for my age. And I can't remember anything else that the book said, but of course the book was confiscated immediately because I'm like, here, you can have this. Like, I ain't reading it. Take it with you. It was given to the cops. And of course, since there was no anything but the book, they're not going to do anything. Um, then we found out that the people who had lived there before had a daughter that lived there, and he was always pressuring her to go to church too and go with him. So that's part of the reason why they moved out. But of course, nobody said that. As far as I know, I was only told that he wasn't allowed to rent to anybody with kids after us because of the whole book and creeping in situation. But I guess it would probably be about a year ago. I started getting this weird feeling where I started thinking about him again, like a lot, a lot. And the only thing I can think of is I 100% know that man was going to rape and kill me. Like, there is no doubt in my mind. Like, I have goosebumps talking about it now. Like, there is no doubt in my mind that man was going to kill me if he was given the chance. And he tried multiple times to get me alone with him. Um, but the only thing I can think of is that he had either hurt somebody for him to be like coming at me so strong, like in my thoughts and thinking about him constantly, or that he's dead. And I would like to hope that it is, the last one, but not sure. I mean, I have even gotten my friend who had just bought a house down here. She was talking about how she can look up records of different houses and who owned them wherever. So I couldn't even find the records of him owning that house. Um, the people that live there now, I don't know them. I hope that they own the house. I'm not sure if they're still renting. I want to go back by that house just because that was the last place me and my mom were together. But I also think it's really weird for me to knock on the door and be like, hey, my mom died in here. Is it cool if I just come in and walk around? Like, I don't want to be like, she's probably haunting this bitch too, but eh. Um, but yeah, that guy has been in my thoughts a lot in the last year, and I'm really hoping it's because he's dead and that chapter is done. But I really wish I could explain the feeling that he gave me because it is the most gross, sickening feeling that you could possibly have for another human being. Like, it's just like bugs crawling all over you. Like, that man was just the filth of the earth. And there is no doubt in my mind that he would not have like murdered and shot me and threw me from here to Pennsylvania. Like, you're an old man. You have no use for a 12-year-old girl. And if it wasn't for my constant feeling of just grossness and hatred for that man, it would have been really easy for him to have gotten me. Like, I mean, if I was like, Mom, I want to go to church with him, she'd be like, yeah, cool, go to church.
Right.
Not thinking anything of it, but it's me going, no, something is wrong with him. Like, I don't want to be around him. Please don't let him come over.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it could have been very different had you been a less intuitive kid.
yeah, and I 100% believe that that is the instance where I'm like, okay, maybe my gut feelings are on par. Even as a little kid, I was like, dude's creepy, stay far away. And then you know, that was a lot of intense stuff to experience from this like grown man. And then my mom dies, and you're like, all right, hold on, let's amp this up. Like, you don't have a
Right.
mom now. Let's see how far I can push the envelope to get you.
Yeah.
And that was just a little bit too much for me. Like, creepy old men are definitely not my favorite.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's so interesting. Like, I don't know, I'm thinking from almost an evolutionary point of view of like being able to tune into energy is a survival tactic, and it definitely was for you in your childhood.
And the sad thing is like, I know that it is that, absolutely it is like the survival instinct, but also like, damn, if years of trauma did not help with the fact that I am so untrusting of men to begin with, that I'm like, one, I don't like you, like something's wrong, and then I'm like, oh, something is very, very wrong with you.
I mean, it's super common, you know, as a therapist, like working with people who've experienced a lot of trauma, like you do become more hyper vigilant, you know, where you are picking up on energy or nuances or just like, you know, body language that other people might bypass. But it's again, it's survival. I have to pay attention to this so that I can keep myself safe.
I literally just had this incident at Sheets the other day with like three other girls. This creepy guy working on the lottery machine, getting his tickets. And these girls looked like they were barely 18, 19 years old, and dude's, you know, mid 30s, early 40s, and he's just staring at these girls so intensely every time they move. And then one of them just looked at me and kind of glanced at him and gave him a dirty look. And she looked at me and I was like, "Do you know him?" And she's like, "No." I was like, "Come over here." So she's standing with me. And then, of course, you know, my child is a child and they have no filter. And he's like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Shut up, dude." She's hanging with us. She's my new friend. Be quiet. And I told her, and I was like, "Dude keeps looking at you and those two other girls." And he's like, or she's like, "Yeah, those are my friends. Like, I've noticed some." And I was like, "Okay, well, you stay here with me." And she goes, "Okay." So I texted Kurt and I was like, "Hey, come back in here, get the kid, and I'm gonna wait with them." And he was like, "Let me guess, creepy man." I said, "Absolutely." So he goes out there, he knows what I'm doing. So I'm just standing there talking to these three girls, waiting for them to get their food. And then, you know, I waited until he left and I mean mugged him the whole way out. Just I did not lose eye contact with him. I really wanted him to know that I was not giving up. Um, we went outside, and all three girls were all together, but they all drove different cars. So I stood out there, waited for them all to get in their cars. I get in our car. And then he had seen that the guy had drove around the building to the far side and was parked. And I was like, he's like, "Yeah, a lot of dudes down there." And I was like, "Shit." So hop out, and one of the girls was backing up and was like, "Hey, girl." And she just looked at me and I was like, "Hey, girl." And she pulled it back up, and I was like, "Dude's parked over there." I was like, "If you want to, I think you need to sneak that side out." Stopped and told all three the same things and waited for them to leave and made sure that truck didn't leave before we left. Because I was like, I'm glad one girl was paying attention, but the fact that there's three girls, three separate cars, and two of them had no idea what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
That's
like,
scary.
"Dude, this is so dangerous." And, you know, I'm having to look at my son. He's like, "Why did you want to wait there?" I said, "Because there was a creepy man looking at them, and I'm not letting a creepy man get them." And I'm having to explain to him, like, this is why women watch out for other women. And this is why we watch out for other people, because some people aren't good. They're not safe. And we have to keep other people safe. And I was like, this is sad that I'm having to give my 9-year-old this whole life lesson, but I'm like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why this is important to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for me to get gratitude or doing the right thing. It's the fact that I know that those three girls made it home safely. And I know that Creepy McCreeperton didn't get his way. So that alone just makes me happy.
For sure.
Weird world.
It is a weird world, you know, but I think it's really good of you to be that person of like, I'm going to be a protector, you know, and I'm not going to let, you know, creepy men get away with their creepy stuff.
I'm too mouthy for that.
We're going to pause this interview here and continue in the next episode with Curt and Rachel Huff. See you next time. Thank you so much for being here. If you have a strange story you want to share with us, email us at seekerandskeptic@gmail.com. We look forward to talking to you soon.